First of all, I have to say congratulations, because you had a very important milestone recently, in that Myrtle turned 90 in April. We sing a song about those things, but that comes a little later in the service, so we're a little belated, but that's okay. We'll sing tonight. So congratulations. And the first thing I thought about when I visited with Myrtle was, gosh, I saw that she was turning 90, and I thought, she's probably seen a lot here in Endicott in her 90 years, because I just assumed, I don't know why, that she was a lifelong native of Endicott. So the first thing I learned about Myrtle was false. She's not a lifelong member of Endicott. So can you tell us a little bit about the big city that you were born in? With your mic way up here.
I happen to have been very lucky. I was born and brought up in a tiny little town up in the Adirondacks, about 10 miles from Tupper Lake, back in the woods, actually, back in the woods, 3 miles back in from any main road. And we had to make our fun. We had to just have our lives centered around family and around church and around school. There wasn't any way that we could be in contact with any of the other towns around us. Tupper Lake was 10 miles from our little town. Well, that's a long distance back then. Anyway, we had lots of fun. We just had piles of fun. Sliding down hills on skipjacks, having skating parties with bonfires, coming home and having hot chocolate in the kitchen of our home, and just so many others. I got to tell you about the bobsled. We had a big bobsled in that town. It would hold about 10 young people. And we'd go out on the logging road, climb up to the top of the logging road hill where they rolled the logs down, and then we'd come down that hill just as fast as we could come. Well, talk about fun. That was just loads of fun. And to have had these experiences in this tiny little town, I don't think there were more than about 200, 250 people in that town. We had a minister. We had church in the basement of the school. We had all of our fun parties and Halloween parties and Christmas parties and everything we had right there in the basement of the school. Church, too, was there. No church building. We had it in the basement of the church. Now that little town had a hotel and one store. One store. We could get a lollipop. We could get ice cream, but there wasn't much else. And it was quite an experience to live in that little town. But along with that came the very basis of my own life after I left Conifer, because I had such a strong foundation, having had a strong Christian family, a strong church to go to. We had our own minister, even though we were just a tiny little town. We had our own minister, and one of the ministers that we had was a lady. And she was one of the best that I've ever known. And she took a real interest in me, and that was one of the places that I received a lot of help in my Christian life, was just talking with her and finding out that there were many things that I could do as a Christian as full-time Christian work or anything, and finally ended up in that. So that little town was and my own life was really the foundation of my faith, the foundation of my own personal family. Now that I have my own personal family, it's made me realize that there were certain things about a family that were very important. My father always said grace at the table. We had family Bible study once in a while, not very often because we were quite active in the church and were active in what they did. But we did study some in the Bible. And see, now I'm going on and on.
I know. You're not looking at those notes at all.
I knew that was going to be going on. And I told you.
You did. I'm doing
I
it.
warned you. Well, it's just been a wonderful life for me because I think it all began way back there. My parents were strong in prayer, which I think is so very important. I can remember hearing my mother talking to somebody upstairs when I was maybe about 5 years old. And I went running upstairs to see who was upstairs with my mom. And she had been talking with God, only she'd been talking out loud. So I heard her. And I look back on that particular situation, and I'm thankful that my mother was a prayer warrior, and my dad too. It gave me a foundation for my life.
So you moved to Endicott with your family. Your kids were not all young. Is that right?
Well, they were teenagers.
Yeah.
You know, we've lived here since '65. Mary Jean was 5. Mary Jean was 5, and the other children were junior high, and Howard was a junior.
So when you moved to the big city, how did you recreate some of that basis of your small town upbringing here?
Go back to Boonville.
Go back to
You
Boonville.
gotta start with Boonville before you get there.
Uh-oh.
Well,
We skipped a chapter.
maybe should be another chapter, but we did have other places where we lived. I'd like to tell everybody the story of my meeting Joe. That's a real story, but we won't go into that tonight. Now, what was your question?
Mary Jean said you need to start telling us a little bit about Boonville and then what brought you to Endicott.
Well, Joe was offered a position in the junior high as the industrial arts teacher. Somebody had left and he was contacted. He let a salesman know that he would like a change in place because our young people were getting older. And we didn't have too much life in Boonville. We didn't for our young people. And we really felt that we should move, thinking that maybe they would go to college here. They didn't, any of them go to college here. Anyway, that too is another chapter.
Now there was something that you told me recently when celebrating your 90th birthday. You had, I'm going to make sure I get it right, all of your kids under the roof at one time.
Oh, yes. One night, it was wonderful. I knew that I would have Mary Jean and Howard and Joanne under our roof on this Friday night. Well, in the middle of the morning, somebody knocked at our door, and we went to the door, and it was Linda. And she had driven down by herself so that she would be with us. And so I had the 4 children under my roof just before Joanne went back to Denver. So that was wonderful.
And how many grandchildren?
10 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. And all of my children and all of my grandchildren are Christians. And that to me makes my heart happy every morning.
fact, I think what you told, I was going to ask her that question. She's not following the notes at all. But my question to tease that out of her that she's already said was, what you told me was that was the single greatest joy in your life, which
Yeah.
left a big impression on me that in 90 years, your single greatest joy was that all of your grandchildren.
All my grandchildren and all of my children are Christians, and they're working Christians. They aren't just by name. They are in church every Sunday, and they're out in the field in mission. It's great to see that happening with young people.
Which is a remarkable legacy. I think that's fantastic.
Yes, that's my biggest blessing. Other than the fact that I have followed Christ myself. And that's a wonderful experience to be dedicated to Christ.
Now, another thing that Myrtle and I found while talking was that we have a couple of things in common. So, my wife and I are also transplants. We didn't start here, although we didn't start in Boonville either. But we're transplants. And I also have a milestone birthday approaching that will stay unstated. Check your notes, it's written down. But when you have these milestones, it is a time of reflecting. It is a time to look back and you think about your 90 years and where it started and how it progressed. And I look back on my 49 plus and say, you know, this is how it all worked, but there was something that I asked you about from your experience, because when I do look back on my faith life, it feels like even now at almost 50, it's just beginning. It's still very young in me. And so I wanted to know from your experience, did you find a point in your life where you felt you had reached the end of your faith journey, or that you had matured, or how that experience was for you?
Never. No, I'm still trotting. I'm still trotting on my faith journey. Everybody is. And that's why we need each other. Each person in this room tonight needs the person next to you. Simply because a journey isn't just a single person walking. It's many people walking, helping each other on the journey. You came to me, and the first thing you said to me, if you remember your conversation, was you wished that you could discern what your next step was.
I did say that.
You did say that.
Actually, I also said, neither of us are using our notes. And you can probably relate to this, if you look back, when you look backwards at things, everything can be made to feel like it connected. This led to this, and this led to this, and everything, even though it may seem like maybe that's not how you planned it, looking backwards, you can somehow make it all make sense because you've lived it and you know this is how, I know how that happened. When you look forward and you wonder what that next step is for you, whether it's your professional life, your personal life, your faith life, then it gets a little trickier. And my point to you about the discernment was, I don't know what's next. I'm feeling young in my faith life. What comes next? What should it be? Is it what I'm doing today? Should it be something else? And if something else, what should it be? And how will I know? And what I said to Myrtle was, when I speak to esteemed folks around this question, particularly in the world of faith, and particularly with Methodists, a word that I will hear a lot is well, you need to be in a period of discernment. You need to discern. And I hate that word. That's what I say. I hate that word because it feels very passive. And it feels like, okay, I'm discerning. And, it feels the same way it did 5 minutes ago. I have not discerned anything better. And discerning is very agitating to me. So when I hear that discernment, I feel like, well, that's a cop-out answer because they don't know what the real answer is. And I want the real answer because I'm very impatient. I want to know what I should be doing. And Myrtle set me straight on this path.
Well, I don't know whether I set you straight, but it certainly gave me a chance to tell him one of the things that has meant so very much to me in my journey. My mother was a great one to put little things up on her mirror in her bedroom if she wanted to remember them. And I remember after she passed away, I went in her bedroom, and there on her mirror was the saying that John Oxenham, one of the bishops of our Methodist Church, had quite a number of years ago. And it was just a saying that caught my eye. Not for one single day can I discern my way, but this one thing I know, who gives the day will show the way. So I securely go. And I've always been thankful for that particular saying. We all have our favorite Bible verses. That, and I do too. But this, I think, has meant so much to me. Quite a saying.
It is. And so it was in that moment that I said, I now know why that morning in March I had that tap on my shoulder that said, go talk to Myrtle. That was why. And so I want to say it again, because what's amazing about this is every time I've heard it and said it to myself, each individual part of it is so meaningful. Not for one single day. Not for one day. Can I discern my way? But this I surely know. Who gives the day will show the way. So I securely go. So this anxiety, this what comes next, I securely go. And I shared this with the group, and I told them, I shared with them that we were having a good time, and I sent this quote around, and I think it impacted several of them as well. So I want to thank you for coming and sharing that with us. I think we have only cracked the cover of the book that is Myrtle singing. And I think we could be here for a long time to explore a few more chapters. But maybe we could do that at another time. Let's say a prayer together, could we? Father, how blessed we are to be a family in this church. I thank you for the example of Christian faithfulness that is Myrtle Seminary, and how you've arranged for our paths to cross in this very special way. I pray that the strength of her faith would be an inspiration to all of us, and that we can all find peace, knowing that with your love, we can securely go. In your name we pray to you.